Every society has its fair share of miscreants. People who are perfectly content with living lives of violence, drugs, and general lawlessness. These people pose a threat to the societal structure that the rest of us rely on to lead healthy, peaceful lives. Therefore, in one way or another, these individuals need to be addressed. But what's the best way to go about doing this? Do we try to negotiate with them and try to solve the problem through communication? Do we remove them from society by throwing them in a jail cell? Or do we go to the extreme and eliminate them in some other way? Of course, a variety of factors need to be considered before that question is answered. Consider Captain Gunner McRedd, a drug-addled pyromaniac who leads a gang of outlaws in the back bays of the Groundbreaker. In my first playthrough of the quest, Happiness is a Warm Spaceship, I was forced to defend myself against Captain McRedd and ended up killing him. However, there was also a way that I could have progressed through the quest that spares McRedd's life, in which case he and his outlaws continue to live on in the back bays. But which is the right choice? Does Captain McRedd pose a real threat to the people of the Groundbreaker and therefore deserve to die? Or is the moral thing to do to let him live? Let's stop and consider the evidence before answering that question. In the Groundbreaker's docking bay, we find a wanted poster that goes into more detail about McRedd's crimes. Wanted, dead or alive, for several counts of public intoxication, destruction of Groundbreaker property, unpaid docking fees, and resisting arrest. Contact Commandant Sunita if you have any information concerning McRedd's whereabouts. Failure to report a tip may result in imprisonment and a fine. Proof of kill required to collect reward. What I found particularly strange about this wanted poster is that none of the allegations seem to warrant killing a man. Dead or alive? For several counts of public intoxication? Dead or alive? For destruction of Groundbreaker property? Dead or alive? For unpaid docking fees? These are crimes, it's true, but at least in the real world, these would never justify taking a man's life. We can learn a little bit more about McRedd by speaking with Commandant Sunita.
It's only a matter of time before someone brings me McRedd's head, or his lucky lighter, as proof of kill. I do hope you're the lucky hunter, though. Good luck and skip speed to you. Still waiting to hear back on that bounty for McRedd. How goes the hunt? I've been ruminating on it, and I decided, if you ain't killed McRedd yet, I want you to hurt him a little before you do. Nothing excessive, mind you, but the scoundrel deserves a light beating at least before he kicks off.
There were two things that I thought were strange about what Sunita tells us. First, I found it odd that she hated McRedd with so much passion, especially considering the fact that no one else on the Groundbreaker seems to really care about him. If McRedd really is as bad as Sunita makes him out to be, wouldn't he be more well-known throughout the Groundbreaker? Wouldn't people be talking about him like they talk about Phineas Wells, for example? To me, it seemed like Commandant Sunita was the only one who truly cared about bringing McRedd to justice. I also found it odd how Commandant Sunita mentioned McRedd's lighter. How would she know that he had such an item in the first place? Thankfully, Obsidian helps us find the answer to this one after we loot the lighter off of McRedd's body. According to the description of the item, the lighter has the word Sunita engraved into it. This can't be a coincidence. First we learn that Commandant Sunita somehow knows about McRedd's lighter, and then we find that the lighter itself has her name carved into it? Here's what I think happened. I think that before McRedd became the person he is today, he and Commandant Sunita were in a romantic relationship with one another. I think that McRedd had so much affection for Sunita that he went as far as getting his lighter engraved with her name. That's why when we go to speak to her, she mentions the lighter. She knows that he probably still has it. What happened next is a bit more unclear, but my theory is that the two of them had a falling out. Unable to bear the sight of Commandant Sunita's face, McRedd moved to the back bays and spiraled into a deep depression, which ultimately led to drug abuse and violence. Commandant Sunita, who again never listed any violent crimes against McRedd on the wanted poster, wanted revenge against her former lover for his role in the termination of their relationship. So she wrote down as many allegations as she could possibly think of and began offering a reward for his capture, dead or alive, even if the allegations that she wrote down didn't justify murder. She didn't care, she was out to get revenge. Little did Commandant Sunita know that MacRedd really was turning to violence. When we first go down to the back bays, we see Captain McRedd standing next to a dead engineer, with his gun, called Montag, clutched in his hand. Then he starts with the threats.
Look at this ripe piece of meat just sizzling on the grill. Yum, yum. Time to feed the flames. It's nothing personal. Promise.
This is the point where we learn two more things about MacRedd. He's violent, and he has an irrational hatred for the people above. I think that some of that hatred could be left over from his relationship with Commandant Sunita, but for the most part, I blame all of this on excessive drug use. On the second floor of the back bays, we find MacRedd's stash of drugs, mushrooms to be exact, growing up from a bed of soil. We learn in a nearby note written by MacRedd's personal mycologist that these shrooms are making him violent. I grow shrooms for a bunch of outlaws, the note reads. They just eat the damn things by the handful. Some of the crew have been tripping for weeks. It goes on to say that MacRedd set a man on fire for having his shoelaces untied, at which point the mycologist decided he should start looking for something that calms MacRedd down. So we know for a fact that much of MacRedd's violent tendencies are a direct result of the drugs. With that in mind, let's revisit the original question. Is it morally correct or morally justifiable to kill Captain McRedd? I argue that yes. Under the circumstances, it is morally correct and entirely justifiable to kill Captain McRedd. This is a man who has committed gruesome murder, likely on several different occasions, and even tried to murder us just for strolling down into the back bays. I argue that he is unhinged, poses a real threat to the good people of the Groundbreaker, and therefore needs to be eliminated. To be fair, one could argue that it's the drugs making Captain McRedd so violent, and therefore none of his violent crimes were really his fault. If he had a clear mind, one could say, he might be a kind and genuine person at his core. But the way I look at it is, if you knowingly ingest harmful drugs into your body, drugs that you know will make you violent and psychotic, then you need to be prepared to take responsibility for your own actions. In the real world, when somebody gets high and then commits homicide, we don't give them a free pass simply because they were high. We hold them accountable for their actions. I don't think that Captain McRedd should be treated any different. Perhaps if the Groundbreaker had some type of prison or a jail cell, then one could make the argument that it would be right to throw him in the jail cell instead of killing him. But since there's really no prison on the Groundbreaker, I think that he needs to be killed, in the interest of the safety of the Groundbreaker citizens. It's unfortunate that Captain McRedd has found himself in this situation. Living in the back bays, ingesting drugs day in and day out, doesn't sound like much of a life. He's a lost soul that's made some extremely poor decisions. We can feel bad for him, we can even try to understand him, but at the end of the day, he's still a murderer, and I feel that he needs to be brought to justice. But what do you think? Do you agree with my theory that McRedd once had his head on his shoulders, and then slipped into a state of depression and mental instability? Is it morally justifiable to kill McRedd? Or do you think he deserves to live? Let me know in the comments below. I post new videos on the Outer Worlds every Wednesday and Sunday, ladies and gentlemen, so be sure to subscribe and hit that bell notification icon so that you can be alerted when I post new content. If you're so inclined, leave a like on this video too. I'd really appreciate it. I'll be back in just a few days with a brand new video on the Outer Worlds, but that's all I've got for now. Thank you again so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.